I do this way too often with this man. He was kind enough to call in after the passing of Norm Macdonald, and I love this guy like a brother. One of the sweetest men on the planet, just like Bob Saget. He's the roast master general here to call into the show to talk about the passing of Bob. He is the great Jeffrey Ross. How are you, Jeffrey?
Oh, I'm doing as best as possible, my friend. Doing as best as possible.
I know, and
a lot of late nights, a lot of crying.
I bet, and that's why I reached out. I'll be honest with you, as always, so many great ideas that they start with Susie, my wife, Suze, and she's just like, you should reach out to Jeffrey. Maybe he wants to talk about him. Maybe that would be helpful, therapeutic, or whatever. You should have him on. And that's when I texted you. I'm like, okay. So I didn't want to bother, but I just figured maybe you wanted to talk about Bob, and
yeah,
I'll give you the floor.
Thanks, homie. It took a few days for me to even gather my thoughts because it's like losing a brother, and I never had another brother, and he provided this incredible safety net in my life. Bob was an expert on comedy, but also life and death and taxes. and if you needed a doctor, you needed a lawyer, you called Bob. And if you needed advice or you needed a pastrami sandwich after a breakup in the middle of the night, he came and he did that. And to not have him is going to be it's going to be awful. It really is. He would have loved the outpouring. He would have loved this.
When did you first meet him, Jeffrey? When did you first meet Bob?
It's a little vague because we always try to remember, and it was probably passing in the hallways at the comedy clubs. But I think it was the Aristocrats movie that really brought us together. The documentary probably made about 15 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And it had a lot of funny comedians doing the same dirty joke. And Bob had the dirtiest version of this old Aristocrats joke. And for whatever reason, him and I were sitting next to each other at the premiere in New York. And we would just start heckling our friend Robin Bronk from the Creative Coalition, and he'd whisper things in my ear to say that he was too afraid to say, or I would whisper things in his ear, and we would just start being this funny little heckling, like the two old guys from the Muppet Show, And the whole movie was dirty, so we were dirty heckling, and we really came together as comedians, and first, and as I got to know the guy. It's interesting. He was this global TV star,
mm-hmm.
but he passed away in a hotel room by himself on the road like a true comic. Which, it sounds sad as you say it, but if you think about it, it's probably how a lot of entertainers, including myself, might want to go. He did a 2-hour show, standing O. I mean, who the hell does a 2-hour show? But Bob loved to talk. And when he had a great crowd, and, these pandemic era crowds are just the best of my career. And Bob was feeling that too. We talked about it. People were so grateful to have live entertainment. When you take something away, then you bring it back. They really appreciate it. And he delivered this amazing performance. And then he got in his car and he drove another couple hours to his next gig for the next day. And he called Kelly and he posted about his show, and he just died. He just died right there in that bed, tucked in with the lights out. Hopefully he didn't suffer too much. Somebody had to knock this Betty White off the internet finally. So
you're too much.
This no good punk Betty White had to be taken off the internet finally.
The Roast Master General Jeffrey Ross here on the Rich Eisen Show. So let's talk about the Saget Roast. Some great moments from that I've been going down like a YouTube wormhole over the last few days. What was that like, Jeffrey? The Saget
You said
Roast.
The roast? I didn't hear you.
Yeah, the Saget Roast from back in the day.
I've been at Bob's house the last couple of nights. With his with his wife and the Full House cast and John Mayer and our friend Mike Binder. And it's interesting to see all the people that he worked with over the years and just being and they're still laughing about, all the millions of shows they did together. And I was really distraught. I was really sad. And I drove home 2 nights ago about midnight, and my cousin Ed was here at my house waiting on me, taking care of my pup. And he had the Bob Saget roast all queued up on a projector in my living room. So we were giant, life-size. Bob Saget was sitting on his throne in my living room when I came home, and it was great. It was like watching. The thing about that roast, Rich, which I know you'll appreciate, was it wasn't all just like a celebrity roast. It was a comedy roast. He had comedians around him, John Lovitz and Jeff Garlin and Susie Essman and me, and he had his best friend John Stamos as the roast master. And I walked in just as Cloris Leachman walked on stage and said, "I'm not here to roast Bob Saget. I'm here to bump John Stamos." And the whole crowd went crazy. And, she was sexy and funny, and a lot of the jokes probably wouldn't fly today. And she said, she looked around the dais. She really was the shining star of the show, because it was all comics, Gilbert Gottfried and me. And Cloris Leachman, she smacked herself in the head and said, "Somebody hit me in the head so I could see some stars." and I remember Norm Macdonald and Cloris. Norm did that wonderful set where he did these like corny jokes, and Bob is just dying. And, you look at Bob, whether he was a 19-year-old on the Rodney Dangerfield HBO specials or a 65-year-old running around the comedy circuit, he really kind of looked the same. Like, I'm aging at rapid speed, but somehow Bob, who, loved his martinis and cigars, looked great his entire life. Like, it's just unimaginable that you wouldn't just see that guy laughing, that laugh. And one of my favorite jokes in that roast was at the end of my set, Bob, the Aristocrats was still kind of riding high in the cultural zeitgeist, and Bob was really embracing his dirty daddy persona. He was being super hilarious and in his stand-up, and he just released a special where he was pretty raunchy. And I said, Bob, if you noticed, I didn't curse once during my show tonight. I didn't want to compete with the master, but I would like to leave you, in honor of the late great George Carlin, who had just passed away. I said, I'd like to leave you all with another 7 words you'll never hear on television. And the Emmy goes to Bob Saget. And he fell out of his chair laughing. And we had this running joke, Rich. We had this running joke for years that he was going to prove me wrong, that he was going to win an Emmy. And, I always hoped he would prove me wrong. And all I can hope is that somehow, he gets that Emmy in the sky somehow, because he really was the most wonderful, talented. He loved comedians. He loved people. He respected people. I saw a lot of my female colleagues talking about how much he respected women and loved working with women. And I go to his house, and Jody and Candace and Lori and all the girls, the twins, they all just love him so much. He took this fake TV family and he made it his real family.